What's up, friend, and welcome to a new video. Today we're going to have a look at the best cards from Marvel superheroes for Standard Constructed. We're going to start off with the 15 best cards that already slot into the Standard format at the moment, and also 5 cards that I think will carry new decks into Standard relevancy. So the next 15 cards are in no particular order, just the cards that I think will have the most impact on the format. So let's get started. So the first card on my list is Jennifer Walters, a 2-mana 2/3 legendary creature. Your opponent cannot cast spells during your turn. Now, that line of text may look familiar to you because it's the exact same line of text that is on standard staple Voice of Victory. However, this card and Voice of Victory are quite different. This is a 2/3 creature, Voice of Victory is a 1/3. This card is a legendary creature, Voice of Victory isn't. But there's also quite a difference in what the cards do, because Voice of Victory has Mobilize, which can be relevant for certain decks, but this card has a Transform ability. For 6 mana, you get to get the Sensational She-Hulk. This is a 6/6 reach trample. Opponent cannot cast spells during your turn, so that static effect sticks around. Whenever a creature control is dealt damage, you may have the Sensational She-Hulk deal that much damage to any target, but it's only once each turn. Now, I think any deck list that is capable of transforming this card will want to do it, and that's going to be mostly these like Selesnya Badgermole decks, of which we have a ton in the standard meta. I mean, you have Selesnya Landfall, you have Selesnya Aerobroid, you have Selesnya Offense, you have Selesnya Gearhulk. There's a lot of these decks that will happily pick up a card like this, and once you get to transform it, it could really go over the top. Like, certain colors can't really deal with this card, especially like red decks will have a, struggle a good amount against a card like this. I think the trample is also really relevant with like practice offense and stuff. But I think also one of the things that pushes this card over the top of like other transform cards is the fact that it has that Voice of Victory effect on there. So the risk of like actively paying for these like transform cards to do the thing is that they can get removed in response. With this card, that isn't possible. So I feel like that also pushes it ahead of like certain like other transform cards as well, because it has that like inbuilt protection. And within green and white, there's a lot of capabilities for this to happen. So I feel good about Jennifer Walters. I think it could see play either to replace Voice of Victory or alongside it. And I think a good amount of decks will play this. Next on my list, I have another transform card. This is King T'Challa, a 3-mana 3/2, a legendary creature, human, noble hero with flash. Whenever a player draws their second card each turn, you draw a card. For 6 mana, you can transform King T'Challa, activate as a sorcery for Black Panther Hope Enduring, a 6-mana 3/3. It does have flash, so if you have the 6 mana to just cast this from out of your like hand, you can still do that at instant speed. Double strike, prevent all damage will be dealt to Black Panther, and whenever Black Panther deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw a card. So this card is on my list because it just does so many good things that I find it hard to imagine it not finding a place in like a top tier standard deck. The static text on there, whenever a player draws their second card each turn, you draw a card, actually reminds me of an old standard staple. You may be familiar with it still, Fairy Mastermind. It was that like 2-mana 2/1 fairy with flash. Whenever opponent draws their second card each turn, you get to draw a card. This is technically better than that because it doesn't just see your opponent, it also sees you drawing your second card each turn and then rewards you with an additional card. So King T'Challa just represents a ton of card advantage, and as you know, card advantage is one of the best things to have in Magic the Gathering, so I think it just has to see a decent amount of play because of that. I think blue and white also put it in a pretty good range in a standard format, like those are very playable colors. And I also think the transformed side shouldn't be underestimated either. I mean, this is a card that you cannot get rid of through damage, like it has to demand spot removal out of you. If it ever connects to the face, it deals 6 damage and draws you 2 cards. Like, that can really swing the momentum of the game into your favor. So I feel pretty good about King T'Challa and Black Panther in Standard. I think it'll find a home somewhere. And yeah, card advantage is always a good thing. Next up, I have Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu, 2-mana 2/2, legendary creature, human warrior hero. You may activate abilities of creatures you control as though those creatures had haste. You can tap this to add 2 mana of any one color and spend this mana only to activate abilities of creature sources. So what makes this card so good is that it gives your mana dorks haste. Now, mana dorks are really powerful in Standard, as you know, your Llanowar Elves, your Badgermole Cubs. This card is going to speed those decks up even further. But what makes the card more interesting is it's just a fantastic combo piece. I mean, there is another card in Marvel superheroes, the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl. This card has an infinite combo with that card, so that's definitely going to make it more relevant. I'll talk a little bit more about that combo later on, but just keep that in mind. Now, one other thing as well is that this card has the same like text on there as an old standard staple, Tyvar Jubilant Brawler, which was a 3-mana Golgari Planeswalker, a very important card in the Insidious Roots decks. It also had like an important combo with the Voldaren Thrillseeker, I believe. So Shang-Chi could actually revive Insidious Roots as well, immediately making your plant token step for mana, kind of like allowing you to storm off. So I'm definitely going to check out the card in like that deck list as well. But in general, decks like these usually tend to be very, very good. And I think Shang-Chi will have a long, long impact on the standard format. It's just a very good card. So if I had to crown one card from Marvel Superheroes as the absolute best, it would probably be this card that we're looking at right now, Avengers Disassembled. 3 mana sorcery, choose one or both. Avengers Disassembled deals 3 damage to each creature and destroy target land. Its controller may search your library for a basic land card, put onto the battlefield tapped and shuffle. This card is just so incredible. I mean, when you realize that in standard people are still playing Slagstorm, I would argue this card is so much better than Slagstorm could ever be, because there's a lot of like non-basic lands that are super relevant within standard. You can only imagine that this card is going to be a staple for however long it's going to be legal. I also think that it is just the perfect control card as well, and control is getting more and more powerful in the standard format. I would argue that like Jessica Control is like a tier 1 deck and stuff. This card synergizes so well with probably one of their best cards, which is the Tablet of Discovery, as it is a red sorcery. Tablet of Discovery wants to cast red cards. It's going to be really good. And of course, this card solves one of the biggest problems that control players may face, which are man lands, or like lands that you can like activate somehow. Like, how good is a Basing Say against a control player? How good is like a Restless Reef against a control player? So this card solves that problem. You don't no longer have to like worry about a Basing Say, while simultaneously this card is also never dead. If you find yourself in a control mirror and your opponent has like a Biblioplex in play, you could also just delete that Biblioplex, right? Instead of having to deal 3 damage to each creature. But the 3 damage is so insanely relevant. Like, this card is so good against Blue-White Momo, any deck that plays Badgermole Cub, Mardu discard. Like, it is just fantastic, 10 out of 10. And it's not just restricted to control decks either. Like, I could even see any deck in red colors play this card as well, because it's simply that good. Yeah, this card cannot be anything but a staple in the format. And especially like a 10 out of 10 pickup that is absolutely going to boost these control decks into an even better position in the format. So a lot of Avengers Assembled will be in our future. Hold your creatures tight, because they're gonna suffer. Next on my list is a potential standard staple. The Wondrous Wasp, 2 mana, 2/1, a legendary creature, human hero with flash and flying. When the Wondrous Wasp enters, tap up to 1 target creature. It loses all abilities for as long as the Wondrous Wasp remains on the battlefield. I could see this card fit into so many standard decks, whether it be in like Blue-White Momo, because it's a creature with flying, so you could actually play it for 1 mana if you have a Momo on the battlefield, or the Blue-White Prison deck list, or Mono Blue. Maybe it helps the mere mid-range become relevant again. It's just so good because you can play this card proactively. Like, you also have the Shana's Tidebinder, which is in a similar like realm of what it does. The Shana's Tidebinder has to wait on the trigger to happen. This card you could just like play out. Like, if your opponent has a Badgermole Cub laying on the battlefield, you could play this card to shut it down, right? And there's also like so many other like relevant abilities that you could shut down with this card. I think it's absolute like 10 out of 10. 2-drops with flash in general have a history of seeing a good amount of standard play. And I think this card is absolutely going to go in that like history of just very powerful 2-drop creatures with flash. And it just feels very well positioned in the format as well. And anything that can shut down like Badgermole Cub or whatever, or like some of these like prowess creatures a bit more proactively, can just be really, really relevant. And I think it will be. Next on my list, I have another blue card, We Say Thee Nay. 2 mana instant arcane, teamwork 2. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you may tap any number of creatures you control at total power 2 or more. Then you have counter target spell unless the controller pays 2. Counter that spell unless the controller pays 4 instead if the spell was cast using teamwork. This card reminds me a lot of the old Make Disappear, which was a true standard staple. It's like 2 mana, instant speed, counter spell unless the opponent pays 2. And then you have the casualty cost of 1. So if that casualty cost was paid, it would copy itself, which would kind of like result into your opponent needing to have like 4 up as well. This card is just so similar to that. And I think this could literally see play in any blue deck in standard that has access to creatures, which is a ton of them. Yeah, it's just like even certain decks in standard are out here playing like quench-like effects. Thinking about like Idle Quencha or like Phantom Interference. Those cards are seeing play, and this is, in my opinion, so much better than that. So it's going to be an absolute like sideboard staple. Maybe certain cards, like certain decks will want it in the main too. You're going to see a lot of this card. It's just a premium counterspell, and Teamwork 2 is so easily done as well. Next on my list, I have the Mind Stone. 2 mana legendary artifact, Infinity Stone, indestructible. You can tap it for white. For 6 in a tap, you can harness the Mind Stone. Then at the beginning of your end step, exile to one other target non-land permanent you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. This card eventually turns into a fantastic blink engine. Now there's a lot of like cards in white colors that have no issue being blinked. Think about something like Overlord of the Mistmoors. This card could revive like the mono white like control decks in the format. Maybe you want to play it alongside like other colors. If you play this alongside blue, you could maybe blink like an Angswift Savior or some of these other cards that have like really good ETBs. But the companion like stone, the soul stone, already sees a decent amount of standard play. Maybe not in like tier 1 decks, but it's very capable of just being played in some like tier 2, tier 3 decks as well and being good in that. I see a similar future for this card. Maybe it pushes things even over top. Like, I do think it's a better card than the Soul Stone is. The Mind Stone just does a little bit more. It's a little bit easier to harness the Mind Stone, I guess. I think the effect on it is better. So I see a future for this card in Standard because it just does many good things. And, you know, a nice like mana rock that can immediately be tapped to add white is never really going to be bad. So yeah, the Mind Stone is probably one of the stronger cards from the set and is going to see a decent amount of standard play. Maybe not in tier 1 decks, but certainly you're going to see it a lot on the MTG Arena ladder. Next on my list, finally a black card, Modok, a 5-mana 2/2 legendary artifact creature villain with flying and lifelink. You can pay 3 life and make Modok connive, so a little bit like hand fixing. You draw a card and you discard a card. And if you discarded a non-land card, you put a 1 counter on this creature. Then it has designed only for killing, so creatures your opponent control get -1/-1. This effect single-handedly makes the card standard playable to me. If you sit there for a second and think about how many cards, how many creatures in Standard have 1 toughness, you realize the impact that this card may have. Whether it be Earthbended Lands, whether it be Llanowar Elves, whether it be Paw Patch Recruits, whether it be Iron Shield Elf, Hardened Academic, Otter Tokens, this card is going to hit a lot of very good things that Standard players love to play with at the moment. I also think eventually it growing, it fixing your hand, the lifelink that it provides can be really nice. And one thing that's cool with this card as well is that it has a combo with Maha. If you have Modok and Maha on the battlefield at the same time, your opponent cannot play any more creatures. Now, that's obviously a bit of a janky strategy, but I have made a decklist during early access that was successful at firing that off. So look forward to how I did that in the future, but it's a really cool little combo that I wanted to, you know, put out there to make you aware of. But yeah, Modok just feels very well positioned against the standard meta. Whether you play this in like a mono black list or you use like green to ramp into it, maybe even like white, you know, maybe you use Momo to get a discount on this card. I think it's going to be relevant. I think it's well positioned against some of Standard's like best creatures. And I find it hard to imagine Modok doing nothing. So next up, we have a build your own Embercleave situation. Team Tactics is a 2-mana instant with teamwork of 1. Target creature gains double strike until the end of turn, and if the spell was cast using teamwork, the creature also gains trample until the end of turn. I think anytime we have the potential to see cards with both trample and double strike work together, something powerful happens. I kind of like underestimated that with Practice Defense from Secrets of Strixhaven, and look what that card is doing now, single-handedly reviving creature decks in the format. If we look at impacts of the past, I mean, Embercleave was super powerful. We had the Mouse decklist where you had like Manifold Mouse giving double strike, and something like Monstrous Rage, like bumping something up and giving it trample. Like, obviously, this is no Monstrous Rage, but I think it could still be really impactful because it gives those 2 very valuable keywords. So whether you play this in like a Leyline deck list, like a Rakdos Fling, and Izzet Fling, mono red, or maybe it just shoves into like itself into Izzet Prowess already because how good it is with like Slickshot Show Off, maybe even like Drake Hatcher that's gaining a lot more popularity. I think Team Tactics just does many powerful things. And I'm not really interested in underestimating a card anymore that gives something double strike. So, and especially when it also gives a trample at the same time, like, it has to be a banger, I feel. So I'm putting Team Fight Tactics comfortably on my list of best cards from Marvel superheroes. Next on my list, I have Super Villain Lockup, 2-mana enchantment with flash. When it enters, exile target tapped creature and opponent controls until this enchantment leaves the battlefield. I wasn't really sure how to feel about this card. It's obviously like a decent piece of removal. But then people told me that it is basically like a reprint of Seal Away, which was like a Dominaria card that saw a lot of play at the time. And that kind of made me convinced that, hey, maybe there is a future for this card after all. I mean, I would rather play something like this over a Get Lost. I can see certain decks rather playing this over something like an Erode, especially if you care about like certain enchantment synergies or whatever. Yeah, it's a pretty good piece of removal. I mean, obviously a creature needs to be tapped. That could be a bit of the downside to the card, but you know, if Seal Away was a banger, then I believe this could be too. So I feel like it's worthy of putting on this list. Maybe something that puts it on your radar, like perhaps this is a card you skipped over as it is an uncommon. But good white removal is always something that's welcome in Standard, and this looks to be good white removal to me. So especially at 2 mana, it's a very good rate. So yeah, putting it on the list. And maybe I'm completely wrong, but I'll believe in the power of Seal Away, and hopefully Supervillain Lockup also makes an impact on Standard. So I know red and black aren't super popular colors together in the Standard format at the moment, but I still think the Ruinous Wrecking Crew just does so many good things that I want to include it on this list. If not in the current Standard meta, maybe in the future Standard meta, even though I think out of all the top tier Standard decks at the moment, it probably slots into like Marduk Discard really nicely. But this is an X black and a red 2/2, enters with X and 1 counters on it. And when the Ruinous Wrecking Crew enters, choose up to X. Discard a card and draw a card. Target opponent loses to life. Destroy target token. And each player sacrifices a creature of their choice. Like, to me, the flexibility of this card just makes it so incredibly nice. I mean, sometimes if your opponent has like a really powerful card laying on the battlefield and you make them sacrifice it, it could be massive. Destroying tokens, I mean, otter tokens, I got my eye on you, discard to get rid of one of those. Opponent losing 2 life, never bad. And fixing, your hand, discarding a card to draw a card, never bad either, especially if you're a deck list that cares about discarding stuff, which, like I said, Marduk Discard in the format may want to adopt this card. But, I mean, I just think, once again, kind of like King T'Challa, it's just a card that does a lot of good things. And I want to be optimistic and see that this card is going to be seeing some Standard play, right? Like, maybe there's going to be a way to like play like a Jund mid-range type of deck, Jund creatures, Rakdos Aggro. I made a video on, felt pretty good. So yeah, maybe the ideal deck isn't here for this yet. Maybe the future of this card is not in like, tier 1 competitive decks, but maybe just like tier 2 to tier 3 decks that you're going to run a lot into on the Standard like ladder. I'd be satisfied with that. It doesn't have to be the best competitive card, but I still think it does good things, and I still think you're going to come across it, and I still think it's just very powerful. So I want to add the Ruinous Wrecking Crew onto my top 15 best cards for Standard. Next up, we have a Golgari card. The Serpent Society is a 3-mana 3/4 legendary creature human snake villain with Death Touch. Ward, get 5 poison counters. Whenever another creature controlled with Death Touch dies, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature of their choice. So the Serpent Society just feels like a fantastic like mid-range value piece. The craziest thing about this card is that, if your opponent gets rid of it, pays the ward cost, gets 5 poison counters, the next Serpent Society that finds its way onto the battlefield technically has hexproof, because if it gets targeted again and your opponent gets an additional 5 poison counters, putting them at 10 poison counters, they lose the game. So I think that makes this card like really interesting in combination with maybe like ways to reanimate it. Like I combined this card with the new Rel that brings back like a 3-drop or less. But I also think in general, like we shouldn't really look at this card as a way to revive poison, because there aren't a lot of poison cards in Standard. Like we literally just have Finn that is, reasonable. You could just build a Golgari mid-range deck list that has a lot of Death Touchers, and there are a lot of really good Death Touchers in the format. Out of the top of my head, think of cards like Cecil, Preacher of the Schism, Karzi Revenant. Like those are all like Death Touch cards that fit into a Golgari mid-range deck, and the Serpent Society pops off hard with those. Like inevitably, your Death Touch creature is going to have to get blocked, or like ends up like dying. Maybe you find a way to manipulate it through like, what is it? Witherbloom Charm allows you to sacrifice a creature. So perhaps you would even want to sacrifice a Death Toucher to force your opponent to get rid of a creature they got. I think there's just so much value in this card. Death Touch, I mean, there's a ton of Death Touchers that are just reasonable, and if they're worth playing because this card makes it so, then I can see the Serpent Society like popping off. So excited to try this out in like Golgari mid-range, just building the deck around it, and I think it's a banger. I think it could definitely like have an impact on Standard. So yeah, you'll see some Serpent Society stuff on the ladder, and definitely from me as well on this channel. Next on my list, I have a card that I was a little bit undecided on, but I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt. Nemor is a 3-mana 4 toughness legendary creature mutant merfolk villain with flying, and Nemor's power is equal to the number of merfolk you control. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell with 1 or more blue mana symbols in its mana cost, create that many 1/1 blue merfolk creature tokens. So I don't think this card is going to be the hero to revive merfolk in Standard, but I do think it can fit into other decks in Standard that work with a lot of like blue non-creature spells, which are a lot of them. Like this card is really great in combination with like all the blue cantrips that we have access to, especially if you also like run this card in combination with like protection spells. Like you have that really good one from Spider-Man, like ups its like toughness as well. As long as you can make sure that this card sticks on the battlefield, it will eventually like win the game for you. So it's a really good engine to invest into. Blue cantrips are very strong in the format. You can very easily play around this. It could be an additional way to win in like the Izzet deck list, Maybe it's even good enough in like mono blue, you know, like especially if you're playing elementals and your opponent's playing graveyard hate, you can really rely on like your Sunnerflux or your Eddymer Crabs. This could be another way for you to perhaps win the game. So blue is in a really good spot, especially very cheap blue non-creature spells are seeing a lot of play. Namor synergizes with that. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. And potentially it could be a fantastic new win con in Standard. And last but certainly not least is the new dual lands. So I'm looking at Dark Fortress here. This is the Rakdos dual. You can tap it for colorless, or you can tap it for black or red. Activate only if this land enters this turn or if you control a basic land. Now, these new duels are so good in 2-color decks. You definitely want to make sure you have a decent amount of basics in your list though. Like, I think you want to be looking at, you know, 5 or 6 maybe. I don't know the exact numbers on that, but that's kind of like where I'm building my decks around. So I would definitely advise playing these in 2-color decks only and not really trying to shove them into like 3-color decks, unless you are playing a really weird 3-color deck list with a ton of basics in there. But yeah, they're going to be staples. Like, they're going to be staples. I've been looking for a new Rakdos duel for a long time, so very happy to see this. And yeah, they're just great. Like, not much to say about it. You know, play your basic lands and, you know, use these guys all the way to the moon. But like also as well, you know, even if you don't have a basic and you could still immediately use them. So, you know, the second the card comes down, you could use it for its colors. Then eventually you have to work with colorless. Already just puts so much more power into these cards. Really hyped, really stoked that these are in the format and absolute staples in your standard like mana basis going forward for as long as they're going to be legal. Next up, we're going to have a look at 5 cards that I think will be powerful enough to make a new deck exist within the standard format. The first card we're going to have a look at is the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl. 4 mana, 4/4, scroll human hero, legendary creature. Do you like squirrels? Whenever this Unbeatable Squirrel Girl enters attacks, you create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token. As an activated ability, I love squirrels. 4 mana, create X1 green squirrel creature tokens for X number of squirrels you control. This card is part of a new infinite combo in Standard that can win the game as fast as turn 3. This card goes infinite with Shang-Chi and with the Enduring Vitality. So Shang-Chi is a card we just saw in the video. It's the one that like makes your mana dorks tap immediately, like give them haste technically. And then Enduring Vitality is a way for you to give every creature you have the ability to be tapping for mana of any one color. So that basically makes it so that your squirrels can tap for mana, and Shang-Chi makes it so that they can tap immediately. So you basically make scrolls, you tap the scrolls for mana, you put it into the Scroll Girl. Scroll Girl makes even more scrolls than you already had. You tap those again, activate Scroll Girl again, and you basically create infinite scrolls. And it's possible as fast as turn 3, alongside like a Llanowar Elves and like a Bazramal Cub or something like that. You can pair that with like win cons. I paired it with one of those like red cards that like pings your opponent for 1 when a creature enters the battlefield. You can maybe use it in ways to like give creatures like haste as well. I already made a video on this card, so if you want to check that out, it's already up on the channel for you to check out. It's just my Squirrel Girl deck list. It stole so many games. It won on turn 3 a reasonable amount of times. And if it didn't win on turn 3, then it'd win on turn 4. I think the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl could be a solid like tier 2 combo deck in Standard. Especially, maybe it could even be like tier 1 in Best of 1, as it's a bit more difficult to like sideboard against something like this. You know, you can absolutely surprise your opponent with a crazy combo like this. So Squirrel Girl, we'll see a good amount of Standard play, especially because of that like infinite combo that she works with. Big fan of that deck list, so much fun to play, and really cool that we have a new combo to work with in Standard. Next up, we have Fin Fang Foom, a very powerful 4 mana 3/5 legendary creature alien dragon villain with flying. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell that targets an artifact or land, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy and put 2/1 counters on Fin Fang Foom. I think this card is going to put land destruction on the radar as a solid Standard deck list. I built this list as like mono red with Fin Fang Foom in there. It was incredible. Really great synergy with all of these land destruction cards, like whether it be Prize of Freedom or the new Avengers Disassembled was especially impressive. You could not only wipe the board twice because of it, so 6 damage to all creatures. This card would also dodge the board wipe because the 2/1 counters put it to 7 toughness, making it so that the card survives while also you're destroying 2 non-basic lands. There's a lot of land destruction in Standard. This is fantastic payoff for doing so. It also becomes a very powerful threat as well, like it grows out of control pretty quickly. So Fin Fang Foom could put land destruction on the radar, but like I said, whether you do it in mono red like I did, or maybe you want to give yourself access to white so you can ramp into this card a bit faster, like Momo makes this card discounted. Maybe you even want to take advantage of like the fact that this is a dragon and use it with Sarkhan and build like a Boros like dragon land destruction hybrid. That's very possible too. I think Fin Fang Foom is powerful enough to give land destruction a spot in standard meta. Maybe not tier 1, but it will be there. You'll come across it on the ladder, and it'll be, in my opinion, a lot of fun to play. I like punishing people for greedy mana bases. This card is the king of doing so. So Fin Fang Foom is a banger. Next up, I have Doom Reigns Supreme. In my opinion, this was the most powerful card from the villain deck list, which is kind of crazy to say, but I think the payoff was just so nice, and the 5 playing counters were also very achievable, and then the card would have a massive impact on the game. 2 mana enchantment plan. Whenever a villain you control enters, each opponent loses 1 life, you gain 1 life, put a plant counter on it. When the 5th plant counter is put on this enchantment, sacrifice it. When you do, target opponent exiles top 5 cards of the library, and you may cast up to 2 spells from among the exiled cards without paying their mana cost. It's just the ultimate like villain payoff, like I said. I was shocked at how good like the ceiling of the 5 cards could be, especially because those cards would be free. So, and there's a lot of ways for you to put a lot of villains onto the battlefield pretty quickly. Like you have Construct a Cosmic Cube, which is kind of like the companion card to this. Whenever you draw your second card to turn, you make a 2/1 villain token. There are like multiple cards out there that put multiple villains onto the battlefield. So I really think the villain deck list could have a spot in the standard format. It was really good when I played it. It had like 6-0 undefeated with it. Video up on that on the channel already as well. So I'm feeling good about villains going into the new set. And I think this card should be played in the villain list, maybe even as a 4-off. Even the losing 1 life and gaining 1 life gives you that like survivability that you may be looking for to eventually make it as far into the game, to get to the 5th playing counter. Like, I just like everything about this card. Super impactful, really nice payoff. And I think villains can, you know, be a standard deck. So Doom Reigns Supreme is kind of like my front face card to basically tell you, hey, villains could be real. Consider playing it. It could be a nice one. Like in general, I see like villains and heroes in a similar spot as like allies a little bit. Like it's just very like self-contained, right? Like I guess there's still some villains from like the Spider-Man set, but most of the villains that you're going to be playing with are from this set list. But Wizards really likes designing these like cards that are basically spawning archetypes from sets. Like Allies is a great example of that. Even Lessons, I guess. So they really want you to play with a deck list that contains out of basically only like new cards. And both villains and heroes are kind of like a great example from that, from superheroes. I think there's enough power behind both of those decks. We'll talk about the heroes next, but I think Doom Reigns Supreme is probably one of the most important cards from villains. So that's why it's there. Great card, and the villain deck list will be really cool to play as well. So looking forward to that. All right, so let's talk about the heroes. Captain America Super Soldier, 3 mana, 3/2, first strike. Enters with a shield counter on him, so that means if he would be dealt damage or destroyed, remove a shield counter from him instead. As long as Captain America has a shield counter on him, you and other heroes you control have hexproof. I think this is probably one of the powerful cards from the hero deck list, if not the most powerful card from heroes. Giving your other creatures, like your other heroes, hexproof is fantastic. But even like the base value of this card is good. A 3/2 with first strike that needs to basically be removed twice is fantastic. I've seen some people talk about this in like white creature decks. I'm not sure about that. I think it really is just contained to the hero deck itself. But if you're playing a hero deck list, this is going to be like a 4-off, if not a 3-off, if you don't want to risk having multiple of the same legendary stuck in your hand. There's a lot of really, really good hero cards out there. I mean, I didn't even like have them all written down or anything because there's just like too much. But there's ways to pump these heroes up. There's ways for you to cheat heroes into play. Like heroes may even be better than villains. I haven't given heroes a shot myself yet, but it resembles like the ally deck a little bit more than villains does. Villains is going to be like a Grixis or like a Dimir or like a Rakdos mid-range deck, whereas like, you know, the heroes could be a Boros aggro list or like maybe a Selesnya aggro list or something. I think those are mostly the colors you want to be looking at. And aggro is just a little bit more well positioned in a format than mid-range would be. So I'm probably thinking heroes could be the stronger deck. And also cards like Captain America are fantastic, man. I mean, that is so good, giving your other like heroes hexproof, but also demanding 2 pieces of removal to be used on itself. Just a banging card. Heroes is looking solid, and I look forward to seeing a hero deck list come out from me. But I think both heroes and villains could be standard playable decks. So, and last but not least, Alien Invasion. Kind of like Eurobresk Forge, but, you know, grown up, I guess. And Eurobresk Forge was an absolute favorite of mine. I miss that card so much. This is a 4-mana enchantment. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 red alien creature token with haste. And this token attacks each combat if able. Put a 1/1 counter on it for each invasion counter on this enchantment, and then put an invasion counter on this enchantment. So this is kind of just like a card. You put it on the battlefield, it skills over time, and it ends up winning you the game, as long as you can stay alive. So I think this deck list is going to spawn like a new form of control deck list, whether it be, you know, let's say like a Naya control deck, or maybe like a Temur control deck list, or perhaps it's going to see play in like the 4-color control decks or 5-color control decks, could be true. I think Alien Invasion could be a really nice way to close games out in control alongside like Jeskai Revelation, of course, because that's always going to be a banging card. But this being like an additional way to win the game, I think is really cool. I think it's a great card. I think it'll spawn some like new decks out of it. I think those decks will be relevant. Like Control is in a really good spot in Standard right now. So as long as you can wipe the board a couple times, keep your opponent at bay, stay alive, and then just get a ton of value out of this card, it's going to be a great win con for, you know, perhaps new control decks. And that's why I kind of wanted to include it on the list, because one, I miss your Best Forge, and two, I do think that there's going to be an Alien Invasion present within the Standard format. So, and maybe you're somebody that likes playing control decks, wants to find a new way to win the game outside of the somewhat boring Jeskai Revelation. Like, I will say it, like, I'm kind of tired of that card by now. This is a really cool, fresh way to approach building a control deck list. So that's why I'm putting it on here. Now, with that being the last card, thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know what you think about my top 15. I was actually quite impressed by how powerful these cards were. I think if you look at the set, just like glance over, you're like, oh, this is just a bunch of like commander slop or whatever. And I think a lot of it is, don't get me wrong, but I also think there is a lot of power for the Standard format, and some of these cards are just like really good, slot into it nicely. And I really do believe in my top 15, but definitely let me know if you think there's any cards that I left out. If there's any cards that you're excited to build around, I would love to hear it. And for now, thank you so much for sticking around. I'll see you in the next video tomorrow, which is just another set with Marvel superheroes being released on Arena today. So look forward to a bunch of superhero brews. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.